dabar nu eegaa jirtanii dhufe haasawni deemaa jiru haasawa guyyaa kaleedhaa koortiitti godhame federaal koortiitti qaama haasawaa jiru jajiidha ni dhageessanii mi sagalee dhaggeeffadhaa waa xiqqoo irraa mari'annaa.
Yes, Your Honor. These are people who on January 20th had travel dates within 2 weeks of that date.
Namtichi amma haasoo jiru kuni nama mootummaa bikka bu'u attorney Kim Jaanin.
So again, I would point to the rest of the language in the order, in the Ninth Circuit's clarification order, but we think a good way to really illustrate what it meant by that is by focusing on the CM. Now, the main plaintiff, his travel date was January 22nd, I believe, so 2 days away from
Tap goda harka eessanin tap goda share goda
very close to when the executive order came down.
tap gaddaddafa kuma dhibbangoo qabdanii odoona naasoonee gallee dafa kuma dhibbangaa yoo gartee gaa dhugatti waan deemaa jiru dhagoo barbaaddan.
And so that's why we apply that 2-week framework.
Well, you know, I have to tell you, the in transit.
Hundi keessanuu tap goda share goda copy link
To
goda.
me, seems like it's unnecessarily cabining the language that's used. If we look at people that had plans within 2 weeks of January 20th, or excuse me, were in transit, or soon to be in transit within 2 weeks of January 20th, I mean, it seems like it would read out the idea that people had arranged or confirmed travel plans. And in transit, to me, there seems to be a tension between in transit with simply plans.
We're not disallowing the fact that on January 20th there would have been other people with
You are the first one to share or the first one to come in?
months down the line.
Kedo adabasa. You are the first one to share?
It is plain to us that confirmability does attenuate the farther away you get from that date, and so there's a stark difference between a date that's just 2 weeks or
Namni
2
biraatis
days away from
bikka irraa nu daawwachaa jirtanis keessa barreessaatuma tap goda.
And the trouble with sort of straying beyond that 2-week window is you'd be opening up potential admissions for thousands upon thousands of people, which is something that the Ninth Circuit clearly did not contemplate.
Thank you, Asako.
Someone had a ticket purchased, a ticket in hand on January 19th, and that they met all the other criteria. But they had
Asco.
a ticket in hand, but the travel date was set for March or April.
Akuma akasi.
That would have meant that their travel was booked, but if that's what the Ninth Circuit had in mind, it could have very easily said travel booked as of January 20 without regard to when that travel had been booked. But I think it went out of
Isino warri biraatu eessa jirtan? Ethiopia, Cairo.
travel plans for a reason.
So someone that has a ticket in hand for travel, you're telling me that some way they evade or do not fall within the scope of
You're the first one for what?
confirmable travel plans.
The first one to do what?
That third criterion.
The first one to comment
Yes, Your Honor.
or log in
So,
or share?
given your definition, I mean, I'll hear from
I-
Ms. Alakase.
Ayyan, Ethiopia jirta? No, America
With
jirta.
your definition of what it means to be
Cairo jiran jenne amma dura.
arranged and confirmable, how many people are we talking about?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is that
No, I'm sorry, this is for Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Kim.
thank you?
Hindi atan gagana. Kuma dhibbaan guutuu bar hindi atani.
No, I was simply
Tap goda hundi keessanu
an opportunity to respond on this.
yeroo dheertuun hin jirtu daddaba tap goda anis isin biraa hin deema beekta.
But no, Mr. Kim, my questions are still with you. So my question is,
Akka nama dhageeffachuu barbaatutti tap goda daddaba.
what it means to be arranged and confirmable. How many injunction protected refugees are we talking about?
So we are talking about 160 who fall within that 2-week window, and we would limit it to that.
And are you able to tell me what the answer would be if you were to take the 2-week date restriction off?
That would be very difficult, Your Honor, because
tap goda.
thousands more people, the process will become that much more involved and time consuming. And so it's hard for me to
wanni irraa haasawaa jiran hedduu waan jajjabduudha irraa haasa'u teenya
if we start beyond that
qaceellootti gartee dhageeffachaatuma
Take it one step at a time. I mean, we've got this tripartite definition. Can you tell me, as it relates to the first part, an approved refugee application, and is there a specific database that the government is looking to answer that question? What's the source of information to answer that question?
So, to get to that number, state could use its case processing system, which is START, to identify which refugees meet the definition that we are interpreting as we are construing.
caffee maal jette
And so,
wanni ati jette naan galle
in our view, from January 20 to February 2nd. And so, START could be used to narrow the group that way. And if state were to provide USCIS this list, then USCIS could use its own case management system to verify that these people were
Jury,
conditional.
akkasii bara yoo hammaaraniitti gannagan irra wayyaadha
You're reading terms into
akka hammaaraatti gannaga
application.
takka takkaanii miti
They're not there. I mean, the order, and I've got the text right here, says individuals who met the following conditions on or before
hammaaraniitti gannaqanii
2025. So, I mean, it seems to me as a question of fact. I mean, remove your date restriction that you're I think, unnecessarily glomming on to the Ninth Circuit.
eenyusiitu looyira barbaada
Can you tell me how many people, as of January 20th, 2025,
bara ka
had approved
looyira barbaadde ka isaana dubbisi
applications authorized
looyira bareedaan sii qaba
in the rest of the language? How many people is that?
As we stated in our JSR, which we believe is no one here given the Ninth Circuit's clarification order, it would be a very large number. It'd be over that annual cap of 125,000. It'd be, I think, roughly 130. But again, that's not the focus here. The focus is on their criteria. And so if we're talking about people who's
Hold on. I mean, the focus right now is on my questions. I want to take it one step at a time. So, to the
dhugatti haasoyni guyyaa kaleedhaa akka malee nama ajaa'ibsiisa
approved, it's the
yoo xiqqaate
130,000 or so that's
warra mootummaa jajiin deeqiqa 30 haaseesse warra kaanis deeqiqa 30 haaseesse
Where's that number derived? What is the source of information? Is it the START database?
that would be dropped in the START database and also USCIS case management system, which is called Global. So it's basically a combination of those two databases.
indiyaa tanga ammallee indiyaa tallaal kuma dhibbaan hin geenye
All right. So
daddafaa taaptaap godhaa hin dhaabin addaan
we look at the next.
imaan dhufteemi
Imposed by the Ninth
baga
Circuit.
dhufte si eegaa jirra
Of that number, the 130,000 or so.
si eegaa jirra baga dhufte
Cleared by USCIS for travel to the United States.
So from USCIS perspective, once they met
buna fiddee dhufte moo shaayii fiddee dhufte
be conditionally approved for possible admission, at that point, they are
Hey, man.
cleared for travel in USCIS.
ani gaa bunaan dhugaa jiru
Then the case would be shipped off to the State Department for travel booking. And so 1 and 2 are functionally equivalent to each other.
All right. So then, if I understand you,
no siinim
the third condition really is where more
Come
winning
on.
takes place. And
kuma yoo feete deemi moggaa taa'e
is there a particular database that you're looking at to determine how many people had arranged and confirmed travel
I'm
plans?
excited too
Yes, Your Honor, it's that State Department database I mentioned earlier, START. And
Uda,
so we
jirta?
start
Welcome.
to figure out how many people have travel booked.
amma dhufte moo assalaamu alaikum illee imaan tunis assalaamu alaikum hin jettu
Booked.
maaliif akkana garuu imaan
Roughly about 12,000.
hulluk jetteetu moo seenta assalaamu alaikum illee hin jenne waay nama hin qaanfanne bar hudaatis akkasii bar akkuma imaan
And when you say travel booked, what does that mean?
jettee turte dhugaa
Basically means that they did have,
yoo kayyattu taate sin agarree garuu immoo
as you said earlier,
anaatu sin hin jaa assalaamu alaikum
and so there was a travel visa issued, and the reason
moggaan seentan ono leensunis dhufte isiinis moggaan seente assalaamu alaikum hin jenne laal isiinis
In that
Ajaiba.
is there a distinction between being
Moggaan seenuu taane
notified,
Egypti
say,
bartanii?
a planned travel window versus
isin silaas warri Ijipti kun hin
in
amanamtan
the way that you just described?
the window that we're applying is basically taking that pool of people who did actually
yoo jettee jirta hudaa ayyee tolan
and simply narrowing it to
I guess my question's a little bit different.
Lal.
You know, let's say
Buda
someone
nama tos kesa
get their conditional
lawyer si tau
receives
jira
an
enyo.
email from IOM
Nama
that
kajalo
says
si
that,
bekunsa.
you know, your travel is planned for, let's say,
Assalamu alaikum
March
jette jirti.
or April. What you just described to me, your definition of what it means to be booked, meaning having a ticket in hand, those people that receive
Imana kan
let's say,
jini
a
ifa.
confirmation email from IOM, they would be excluded from that 12,000 number that you just quoted.
No, those would be.
Wa alaikum salam umurayana kan jirti.
included in that definition. But when it comes to our application of the criteria,
Tap goda share goda linki
All right, thank you, Mr. Kim. I think
anka dhaggeeffannu kana agartee kuma dhibbanga'uu qabdanii oduu babbareedduu keessa jira oduu dhaga'uu qabdanii keessa jira waan haaree hedduu keessa jira
down the number, crediting Mr. Kim, and it seemed to be agreement amongst the parties about there being 130,000 or so that might be conditionally approved.
dhageessanimi 130,000 nama kuma dhibba tokkoo fi soddom kan ga'u jechaa jira
Travel arrangements and
amma dura nama kuma diddamfaa nama kuma soddomfaa irraa haasa'u turre yoo yaadattan
Our understanding is the same as to the
amma immoo nama kuma dhibba tokkoo fi
criteria
soddom
because our understanding is that anyone who meets that third criteria would necessarily have met the first
Amma
two
intaltee
criteria
haasawaa jirtu
on
tuni
or January 20th.
warra gartee looyeroota isin jechaa ture sanii bikka buuteeti isii hojii looyeroota hedduutu jira ammarraa eegalanii isiitu haasa'u
Arranged and confirmable travel. We
isiin warra
also agree with your
refugee
order
bikka
that,
buuturraayi
you know, the government's
namtichi reefuun
restriction
tanaa immoo kan
would
mootummaa
add
bikka
language to the
bu'u
Ninth Circuit's
inninis looyeroota isaa hojii jira
that does not exist.
kan gaafii gaafachuu jiru
Plaintiffs,
jajjamaal
the
waayit head
idea of confirmable travel is travel that can be confirmed.
I am
And,
doing wonderful.
To zoom out a bit, for the vast majority of refugees,
Buma, kam
travel
jirtaati?
is
Nagayami?
arranged for them by IOM because they do not
Welcome,
secure their
welcome.
own travel. So when that travel is requested by the Resettlement Support Center and scheduled by IOM, those arrangements are put into a database that is accessible to the resettlement partners as well as to defendants. So the fact that
yes.
it would be on the one hand
Huda,
start.
thank
I
you,
will say that the
Atis.
resettlement partners do
Atilena
not currently
Kasmanti.
have access to start since the suspension of
Right
the
back at
resettlement
you.
support centers. What they do have access to is a different database called IRIS,
No, judging
which
what
allows
Ethiopia
them to
thinks.
see this information only for the
In
cases that
Ethiopia,
they
da.
are going to be responsible for resettling. So we
White head,
have
namni last name white head kabu
information
Ethiopia da.
about what these numbers look like for the organizational plaintiffs CWS and HIAS. Between them, they estimate that using this kind
Eh,
of
ni
plain
Oromo,
language
duga.
reading of the Ninth Circuit's
Duga
order,
Oromo.
that a refugee have had travel
Wan gara
arranged,
lafatu
which
fi.
is confirmable. They have about 2,200 refugees between them for their
Ati jaalanne waan garaa laafatu fi Oromoo dhahette.
for travel on or before January 20th. And, you know, anecdotally from their interactions with other resettlement partners,
Eh, hundi keessanuu warri gaa mana keessa jirtan
14,000 in that position. So I think this
eh,
would be more
obboleessa keenya,
12,000 figure
qabsaawaa
that,
keenya,
council
jaalatamaa,
arrived at.
wallisaa keenya, Qadiir Martuudhaatiifis akka jirtanitti du'aa akka gootaniif hin fedha. Warri mana keessa jirtan hundinuu maqaa Qadiir Martuudhaa mana keessa barreessa.
Your Honor mentioned
Maqaa Qadiir Martuu akkasumas odaa bira kaayatii barreessa.
travel arrangements.
Qabsaawaa keenya,
Understand that that notification
jaalatamaa
may not
obboleessa
be
keenyaaf
carried
du'aa godhaa.
instantaneously upon
Hin irraanfatinaa.
travel by the resettlement partners.
Namtichi kuni gartee nama quqaa Oromoodhaa habbaata kan dandeenye. Oromoo gartee Oromoo dura nama du ni beektanii akka malee jaalanna daddafee gartee akka rabbiin nuuf fayyisu du'aa goonaa fi maqaa isaa mana keessa barreessa Qadiir Martuu jaa barreessa cinaa gartee feetaniis ililli cinaa keessaniis akka odaa cinaa keessaniis waanuma gartee barbaachisu cinaa haayaa
Stay with you, Miss Elegant. Elegant says that
nuti gartee goota keenya odoo lubbuun jiru du'aa goonaa fi odoo lubbuun jiru akka jaalannu itti
Yes,
himna
with the caveat that
akkasitti gartee hundi keessanuu isa cinaa dhaabbachuu qabdanii kanarratti gartee du'aa godhuu fi hin irraanfatinaa dhugatti gartee nama akka malee gartee dhiigni isaa Oromoo dura ganna qabu tokko namni gartee kadir martuudha beeka tanin raanfatina
Restoring access to the STAR database. I mean, that's something that has appeared in the
yaa barreessa kadir martuu yaa barreessa
organizational plaintiffs in CWS.
sibira jirraa si jaalannaa du'aayii si godhu jirraa yaani
Accessing the STAR database. What is the issue with restoring their access to the STAR database? What would that entail?
So, to the extent that these aren't active resettlement partners that the state government is working with,
dhiyeessaa daddafaagaa kuma dhibba dhiyaachuu jirtanii daddafaa kuma dhibbaan gaa
to access our database to get to
haasawaa keenyatti eegalla
precise number of the number of people who actually fall.
taaptaap godha
The STAR database is a reliable database to use, despite the differences between the
hay namummaan gaa kana qofaa sheer godhe immoo
that their criteria
qaanyii hin qaanfattan
is a reliable database to use to arrive at
dhugatti sheer godha nama muraasaa sheer godhe garuu
So, restoring access to the STAR database, I mean, is it as easy as flipping a switch? Not to be glib, but I mean, is it easy to do?
I can't speak to the technical challenges that might present, but I don't think it's as simple as flipping a switch, Your Honor. I do think that there would be more of a complicated process involved in the decision and the actual action, the technical action of restoring access to the STAR database.
sheer godha yaa kana laal
To the question of the data itself, I mean, the data is still intact.
The data would be intact, yes, Your Honor.
All right, and Mr. Kim, I mean, to my question, perhaps I'd asked it inartfully so, but just the idea that there's a difference between what's in the database and what's in possession of an individual refugee. I mean, how would the court go about reconciling a situation in which the STAR database comes back in the negative for arranging for travel plans for an individual, an injunction protected, a refugee, but that person is in possession of an email from IOM stating that your travel is upcoming, your window's coming.
So, we're not categorically ruling out the possibility that there may be some other situations like that, but on the whole, the STAR database is.
I'm sorry. This is the court. I need you to speak a little slower, and you're so far away that it is a little hard to hear sometimes your voice. So please speak directly into your microphone and slow down a bit. Thank you.
So in those individual cases where there might be some
the-
discrepancy between what the STAR database shows and what a notice might indicate, we could work on those individually. But on the whole, Your Honor, the STAR database is reliable, and to the extent that the STAR database shows that a certain number of people have booked travel, that is information that both parties could rely on. And in terms of these one-off situations where an email notice might suggest otherwise, we could readily reconcile those situations.
Right. So,
barreessaa kadir martuudha barreessaa hin dhaabina isa barreessu
reinstating travel arrangements
akka malee ka jaalannu ni beeytanii
that have lapsed or that were canceled
tokkicha keenya
when the
goota keenya
was issued.
akkasuma sanitti qabsaawaa
Injunction protected refugees
wallisaa keenya
with travel.
nama oromoo hundaaf madaa'u laal xiqqaa guddaa gosaami amantiimi waan takkaan nama agartee addan baaf oromoo hundaa haa jaalatu
The first step would be the security vetting aspect of it. Now, when it comes to security vetting, there are several checks that have to take place. So to start with, the USCIS biometric checks. Now, those wouldn't be all that difficult to redo, but they would have.
bikki kuni bikka jabduudha laal bikki amma jajiin looyartichi haasawaa jiru kun
Center checks that have to be redone as well. Those expire after 30 days. So no matter how you're defining that third criterion,
akka malee bikka jabduurraa haasawaa jira